Hello everybody and welcome to another episode on Super Negotiate's Procurement Masterclass. Today I'm very excited because I'm going to start something new. Something that has been emerging as a next big thing in procurement analytics. Something which has been modified from its traditional roots. Something that adds significant value to the procurement risk metrics. And I'm talking about Procurement Fraud Analytics. Now, procurement fraud is not a new problem. It has been there since ages. But what has changed, what has fundamentally changed, is the way the whole function is now being discovered. You see, there are only two modes, or there were only two modes, basis which procurement fraud was done traditionally. One, post facto, where some sample transactions were taken and they were tested from end to end to see what sticks. And the second was always about whistleblowing, receiving an anonymous tip and going on to a hunch. But with the recent rise over the last few years in data science and the computing power, it has changed significantly. We can now analyze patterns from hundreds and thousands of transactions to really fish out some of the suspicious behavior. My objective for this class is to give you a gist of what exactly world of procurement fraud analytics entails, so that you can decide whether you really want to take a deep dive and become a master of this skill set. I'm also writing a book on this fraud analytics domain, which will come out later in the year. But today, I just want to give you some food for thought. Let's jump right into it. So procurement fraud can happen in three stages or three phases. Let's start with phase one. Phase one is before the sourcing event has started. Okay. Phase two will be during the sourcing event. And phase three is post facto. That is after the sourcing event. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is, for each of these phases, I'm going to describe you a couple of use cases to give you some sort of insight of how to detect some of the frauds that can happen or are even happening today. Okay. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to move these two here, and whenever a fraud happens, it can happen two ways. It can start with a buyer and have supplier as a collusion partner, or it can even begin purely from supplier perspective. Okay, so let's say the role that we are playing right now is of a buyer, a malicious buyer who wants to game the system. And I always want you to think as a white hat hacker in this case. How will you explore the weakness in the process and try to exploit it? All right. So we are going to design some use cases around it. Okay. Now, if it is before the sourcing issue and event has started and I'm a malicious buyer, the first thing that I can always do is to eliminate the qualified suppliers. Okay. The second thing that I will always do is to introduce my favorite vendor or introduce the unqualified suppliers. All right, because that's how the collusion will always start. One second. Brilliant. Okay. The third use case will be I will introduce the suppliers where I have a conflict of interest. Okay, what do I mean by conflict of interest? By conflict of interest, I mean I have some sort of existing relationship with this supplier. I may be a passive investor in that company. I may have a family member who's working in the sales team. I may be even a board of directors, which my employer is not aware of. That's what I mean by conflict of interest. The fourth thing I can do as a malicious buyer, I can always design the scope in favor of one vendor. Okay, let me pause here because I'm trying to keep it simple just to give you enough flavor. Now, you may ask at this point, all of this is fine, but can I really fish out all these suspicious behavior using data from hundreds and thousands of transactions? And the answer is yes. All you need is really simple SQL basic query language skills, basic Python skills, and I'm not even talking the advanced machine learning stuff as well, but for the use cases that I have just shown you, you only need basic skills to fish out transactions. You know, to be an effective procurement fraud analyst, the skill set doesn't lie in your intermediate to expert level Python or R or SQL query language skills. Your skill set is identifying the use cases library. So all your use cases becomes your toolkits of what to look for. So focus always on the use cases. Now let me go towards the supplier. Now if I'm a malicious supplier, okay, the first thing, which is the most common thing a malicious supplier will do, is to establish a buyer-supplier relationships. Okay, and this is where I guess most of the whistleblowing will always happen as well. Somebody will see supplier interacting with the buyer and they will tip off, etc., etc., etc. But there are some obvious signs as well in terms of communication, in terms of meetings. But again, I'm just sticking to the points which can analyze from the data perspective. All right, and then we will go into deep. What do I mean by buyer-supplier relationships? We will go in depth. But for now, focus on this. The second thing a malicious supplier will do, if the supplier knows that the company is blacklisted by your company or it's in the critical watch list, I will form a shell company and use that as a new supplier to enter into the bid. All right. Use the third thing which I will, should I mention it here? I think I can. The third thing which I will do is I will say, yes, I can meet your requirement. Let's say if the buyer reaches out to me and I'm a malicious supplier, I will say, yes, I can meet your requirement, but I will always be vague in giving the technical specification. Okay, and we will expand on this later, as I told you. Okay, so let me conclude this first here. And it's non-exhaustive. There are so many use cases which we will cover as we progress into this series. But I'm just trying to give you an idea at the moment. Okay. Now let's start from the second one. Let's say if I'm a malicious buyer and the sourcing event is going on. First thing I can do is leak the confidential information. Right? Leak the confidential information to one supplier. I can always do that. All right. The second thing I can do is I can let me take a pause for that use case. Let me go into the supplier one and then I'll come back on this one. All right. So if I'm a supplier, I can always do bid rigging. Now, what do I mean by bid rigging, right? So let's say there are 5 suppliers who are participating in the bid. All of them collectively decide one winner before even the sourcing event has concluded. And how will they do that? 4 out of 5 suppliers will bid astronomically high collectively. Okay, and the one supplier will bid marginally low, or let's say 10 or 20% lower. and you will decide this particular guy is your winner. Later, this winner will either subcontract some of the portion to these 4 or 3 or 2 suppliers, or even worse, share the profit percentage later. And that's what we call as one example of bid rigging. Another example of bid rigging could be they always take turns. Same group of suppliers always take turns to win the bid. It could be for the same geography, it could be for different geography. They can always decide, I want to maintain market share of 20% in this particular domain, that particular domain, decide upon their territory, etc., etc., etc. And again, these are some of the really easy, lowest hanging fruits that we can now catch using the open source libraries in Python, and let's say even using simple SQL queries. The third, or rather the second use case in this would be, let's say a malicious supplier will give lowest offer to win the bid, but will follow up with many change order requests. This is also a case where the electronic reverse auctions are happening. Now it's very good to boast about that you achieved 30%, 40% saving in the reverse auction. But what you don't know, how many cases are appearing frequently where the suppliers who won the bid are now asking for change orders because of reason A or reason B. And this is where I want to bring this point here. Now a malicious buyer and the malicious supplier can agree and do a handshake of going to the lowest level first, and then later this malicious buyer will approve the change order request multiple times and ensure it's below the threshold so that no approval is required. All right. The third use case in during the sourcing event is subcontracting. Let's say greater than 60% or 70%. Okay. And again, there's no value addition by your principal supplier. It's your subcontracting which takes care of this. Now let me jump towards the post facto, which is after the sourcing event. Okay. And here what we call is anomaly detection. Okay. Anomaly detection. What do I mean by anomaly? Is a behavior which stands out from the average or a normal behavior. For example, some of my favorite use cases here is unit price is higher than usual. Second use case would be PO with budget split attempts. Third use case will be rapid rise in business share of an expensive supplier. All right. Fourth use case would be supplier rise in business share of a high risk supplier. What do I mean by high risk? Is the revenue or profit of supplier is less than the PO value. Okay, and you can decide how much threshold you want to keep. These are some of the use cases. Now I spoke about here the buyer supplier relationship. Okay, now let me go deep into it because it forms a fundamental principle of how a fraud should be explored. Okay, the point I'm trying to make is if you hit any one of the use cases, it doesn't mean you have discovered a fraud. That's really premature. Okay, you have to follow at least some sequential rules. See if a pattern is emerging. Okay, and that pattern gives the rise of that you have to explore the transactions in much more detail. coming back to the supplier buyer relationship, and this has worked for me quite effectively, because this is for me is the last final check before I can statistically determine, I think something fishy is going on from this transaction, let's explore forward. Okay, so what do I look for? I look for supplier profile checks. What do I mean by profile checks? I'm looking for common addresses, supplier with common addresses inside my database, common emails, common phone numbers, common bank addresses. One second. Okay, phone numbers, common bank addresses. And I'm not just checking supplier. Of course, I'm checking this supplier. I'm also cross-referencing this data, supplier and employees. I hope you get the idea. Okay. And I'm also looking for ghost suppliers or shell companies where the PO addresses are just mailboxes. I can't ping their websites, the email addresses are Gmail addresses, etc. All right. So this is for me is a supplier buyer relationship aspects towards it. Coming back to some of the additional use cases is fake invoices. By fake invoices, I mean the payments have been done, but the goods have not been delivered. So payment done, but goods not delivered. It's very difficult to catch the services because there's no tangible aspects. Hence, the fraud in services below $10,000 is extremely common. The fourth or fifth or sixth, lost the count, is the change order abuse, which we spoke of earlier. The way we catch this is the PO value, which is the initial PO value versus the amount paid, is exceptionally high. All right. So these are some of the cases of in the field of procurement fraud analytics that we encounter on quite frequent basis. Now you might be wondering, that's quite a lot of information in this session, but I just wanted to give you a gist of what is the actual work all about when you're looking at hundreds and thousands of transactions. Now, I'm in the last part of the video, but I just want to leave you with some of the thought process of how you should attempt in building a career in procurement fraud analytics. How to build a skill set. Let's start with there. In procurement fraud analytics, you need to have the mindset of category manager. Of course, you need to know how to do a purchasing day-to-day transaction. You need to have some background in data science, specifically SQL queries. Come really handy when you are doing querying on the large data sets. Okay, you need to learn SQL queries. You need to have Python and R basic to intermediate experience so that you can explore standard data exploration libraries, and we will touch on how to use Python, because I only know Python, how to use Python and SQL to explore a large data set and find out some suspicious transaction. I think I will do my next video on specifically on that aspect. Apologies, I'm a bit unstructured because I'm trying to do this on the fly. Another aspect I forgot in the buyer-supplier relationship is 2 points I always inquire here. I'll move this down. 2 points I will always inquire. Who is the requester? Who is the requester? And approver for a supplier. Create a profile, and you will always find certain people approving certain suppliers faster than other suppliers, and we can design a use case around it. Another point is who else is using this supplier. And if you find that there is only one person who uses this supplier, then you have a hit. Now, you might be wondering, all of this is fine, but how do I use this information? Okay. And I will make a new video on, we will start with a dummy data set. And then I will show you how to chronologically or sequentially arrange some of these use cases and arrive at a suspicious transaction. I think that will be fun. So in my next video, I will do that for you. But I hope you get the idea why Procurement Fraud Analytics is the next big thing in the procurement excellence domain. The world is changing, the data science is becoming the critical aspect in running the procurement excellence setup. My name is Gaurav, and it means so much to me that all the support I have been receiving in making these videos and the responses that I'm getting. I'm also trying to run a procurement bootcamp where I'm trying to invite all the procurement domain experts and technical coding and data science experts to come and work collaboratively over one weekend, where we all sit together and try to solve some of the most difficult problems in procurement world today. If you don't have the link, go to my previous post on my LinkedIn channel and you will be able to find the registration link. Again, thank you so much for supporting this channel. My name is Gaurav, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much.